Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Mad Men Podcast, your podcast dedicated to the AMC television show Mad Men, where you can find your best source for news, talk, and more. My name is Jeremiah Panhorst, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, Elise Crane Derby. How you doing, Elise?
Hey, Jeremiah. How's it going?
I am doing great. I am doing great. How can I not be great after watching an extremely good episode of Mad Men? I think we're hitting our stride here. This is it, Elise. This episode by far was the best we've had, I feel, of the second half of season 7. So I'm thrilled. I'm pumped. I'm excited.
Me too. That was a great episode last night.
Yeah, it certainly was, and I'm really excited to talk about this. So let me go ahead and set the stage here for the show tonight. Those of you who are, of course, watching this live, we welcome you. Thank you very much. You can always do that here at madmenpodcast.com/live. We've got a chat room going. If anybody would like to jump in on that, that'd be great. Otherwise, we're always here on Monday nights around this time, which is, of course, 8:30 Eastern Time. And by all means, join us if you can. So we're definitely excited, as you could tell, by talking about tonight's episode. And really, that's the only thing I wanted to mention. Now, last week, Elise, I should have said this, and I completely forgot. There was some piece of business I was going to do. I was going to congratulate my good friend Rob Cesternino for winning 2 big podcast awards a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas at New Media Expo. He won Best Entertainment Podcast and a People's Choice podcast. At least he beat out the biggest podcast of them all, Serial, which of course people who even know anything about podcasts knew about Serial, and he beat them out to win People's Choice. And I didn't get it. I completely forgot to mention that last week. So there you go. I've mentioned it now. So congratulations, Rob Cesternino. That's an amazing accomplishment. Unfortunately, at least we were not even nominated. I'm sorry to say. Yeah, I know.
That's all right. We're underground. We're underground.
Is that? Yeah, that's what it is. Right. Yeah, that's what all the kids are saying about our show, I'm sure. Well, that's good. Maybe someday I'll be on a podcast that gets nominated for awards. You never know.
For now.
Well, let's dig right into this episode. Of course, the title of this one was called Time in Life. It was the 11th episode of season 7, and it was written by Matthew Weiner and Aaron Levy and directed by, everybody was talking about this, Jared Harris, of course, directed this episode, and it aired on April 26, 2015. Did you know that Jared was going to be directing this episode?
I saw that. I thought that was great. They brought back so many old characters, and of course they can't bring back Lane actually, but they can have him come direct. So I thought that was a nice little hat tip to our beloved Lane.
Well, it certainly was. We've had some of our other actors, of course, come back to direct. We've had John Slattery, of course, has directed many episodes, and so has John Hamm. It was great to see Jared get a chance to do this. He did, to me, I thought he did a beautiful job in this episode. So many fantastic shots that we could obviously discuss for some of the many great scenes in this episode. And also, too, he really got everything out of all of the actors, too. Everyone's performances was fantastic. So kudos, great job, Jared Harris. You did a fantastic job. And we miss your character, but we're so glad that you're able to, be behind the scenes for this final season of Mad Men. So it was really great to see. And I know we've definitely had some of our listeners send me messages saying, "Hey, did you see who directed it?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah. I had cheated. I had seen that he was going to be directing this episode before the season even started. So I was excited to see what he did, and I thought he did beautiful job. Right? Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. This is definitely the best of the episodes we've seen so far.
Right, absolutely. So you loved it. I loved it. What was your overall feelings? What were some of the things that you really enjoyed about this episode?
Peggy and Stan was epic. I loved that whole thing. I liked the I would have loved, if the season was going on, I would have loved to see the show where they all moved to California and continue the agency. I was so excited about that, and I was like, oh wait, calm down. There's only like 2 more episodes, so there's not going to be some big California part here. But yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I did too. it was obviously the first episode we've had where something obviously major happens. I mean, this was a big moment, of course. The basically the end of an era here, as they've been saying it for this whole season. But yeah, an end of Sterling Cooper, which is really obviously very sad. Obviously, Roger had a big time hard to swallow for this, for obvious reasons, and we'll talk about all those. But yeah, it was an emotionally fantastic episode. I loved that theme, and we've explored a lot of these themes that with this episode really enhanced in this particular one, but especially that idea about Elise, where choices that you make in your life a lot of times can turn around and dictate what happens to you in the future. And we of course explored this so much in this episode, and I thought it was nice and fitting to the way they tied everything in for this episode. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, that I glossed over a little bit with Jared's work here with this episode, I thought that the shot there when all the partners, when Hobart leaves the office and you see all the five partners sitting there at that table, and how it eerily reminded me of that shot when all the partners are sitting in front of those same windows. Well, at least we assume there's the same windows, but the windows when they had bought the second floor, and we got to see that in season 4. Remember when they bought the second floor, and you had that shot of all of them standing in front of the window. I love how that kind of like really give you that feel from that particular scene, that particular shot. Did you agree? That was pretty cool how they did that.
Yeah, that is cool. I didn't really think about that when I was watching it, but it's true. They were so powerful all standing there in the previous one. And then here where they're all just kind of sitting at the table like, oh, what just to us?
Yeah, they all had a just dumbfounded look, like, a look of defeat, because they had worked so hard at this plan to keep them, together and keep them in their own separate office in California. And then for it to fail, it was obviously devastating for each one of them in certain ways, except for maybe Ted, and we'll talk about that. But obviously the top story for us to talk about is the absorption of Sterling Cooper Partners is no more. And I guess this is how it's going to end as far as for the agency. The first thought I had is, wow, how do we, me and you, not see this coming? I will admit we have one of our listeners, Chris Toms, he sent me an email of predictions right before the season started. And the one thing he wrote about the agency, he says, I expect the agency to get absorbed by McCann Erickson before the end of the season. And sure enough, Chris, kudos to you, my friend. You got it. You nailed it. Elise, I don't know why me and you didn't mention that. At least I don't think we did during our predictions podcast, did we?
I don't think so. We definitely talked about them, kind of getting manhandled or, but I don't think we thought about them getting absorbed in. I really didn't. The way that they drew up, or they talked about drawing up the contract be under McCann Erickson, I didn't think that was a possibility, but obviously it was.
Yeah, right. We didn't know what all the details could have been as far as how that could work out, but it makes a lot of sense now, seeing it just like many other times when I've kind of questioned about which direction Matt was going with something. And then after this episode, it just felt right. It felt like, okay, this makes sense. It was just a big test for them to see how, would these people really work well at McCann. And by doing this, it was like a nice long 1-year interview kind of for the most part for them. And they've decided, hey, let's stop paying for another building. Let's just bring them in and close the shop, and we'll be done with it. It's just all McCann.
Yeah. So sad. I really do want to see like the show where they move to California and run Sunkissed and whatever else they have.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I know both of me and my wife, even though we were wondering whether or not this big plan of theirs was going to work, because we've seen them do this before, at the end of season 3 with the way they worked out the deal to start their own company, to start Sterling Cooper Draper Price. And then, of course, the whole deal with the Chevy and how they merged the two companies there. So we've seen this before, and we were wondering, of course, as we hear about Don's idea on whether or not they're going to pull it off. And I was like you. I was kind of rooting for it to happen, even though it really wouldn't have made sense for it to happen. Like that the rest of the last 3 or 4 episodes were going to be them in California. It probably wouldn't work out unless, of course, the show was to continue on a lot further, and we were going much past season 7. Then okay, you could maybe do that and have them go to California. But it makes more sense that McCann said nope, it's a done deal. So, but yeah, I would have loved to see him in California, out in your neck of the woods, right? That would have been great.
Exactly.
So one of the things the first question I had once the episode was over, I was thinking to myself, okay, so we got 3 more episodes left, right? And yes, I'm counting the finale. So we got 3 more episodes left. So how far are we going to take this? Are we going to see them moving into their offices? I mean, they see them actually move in. Are we going to see the McCann Erickson set?
I was looking at the scenes from next week. From last night's episode, and there was a scene of Don kind of like looking down out of a window. I don't know if that was the McCann offices or one of his new apartments that he's looking for. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if next week they're moving in, because it's only a month, and it seems like each episode has had about a month spacing between each of them. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw some people writing about this, thinking, well, gosh, man, with only a few episodes, and Mad Men's going to go through a whole set change so they can have different offices. But I think that you're right. Since we have 3 more left, and each episode has been jumping up right around a month at a time, that month that their lease is up is going to easily take us into the second to last episode, the Pimentel, episode probably. So I don't see how we cannot somehow see it unless the last couple episodes really isn't going to do much about what's going on in the office at all, which that, of course, is possible. But I guess there's a good chance that we will see inside of McCann.
Yeah. Or the next 2 episodes could just be a 2-parter Peggy and Stan's wedding.
It could be, yes. Well, we definitely got to talk about the Peggy and Stan thing that blew up the internet. That's what everybody was talking about, of course. But I guess we will probably see inside the McCann Erickson offices, or some people call it the Death Star. So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out, and especially too because I think as fans, a lot of us that are hardcore fans, we're concerned not just about what's going to happen with our main characters that we all love. I also care about Dawn and Shirley and Caroline and everybody else. I care about everybody in the office. That I want to know who makes it, who doesn't, and if we get to see them going into the office, we'll have a good idea of who McCann does take on and who they've let go.
Yeah, I was really worried last night when Shirley was like they need another office manager, and it was like, oh God, no, not Shirley.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. I was feeling for all those ladies because
Dawn. Not Dawn. Shirley shouldn't go either. Hopefully Caroline won't push her out of that window.
Yeah, Shirley was obviously concerned because she's the second Roger's second secretary, and then of course Dawn's concerned because they don't need another office manager, and totally understand this concern. So hopefully all of them somehow make it on board. But being realistic, of course, not everybody is going to make it. So it will be very fascinating to see who does and who does not. And I do think this is going to be a plot point here for these final few episodes of that transition, and I think that will definitely pull off the emotions that we're going to have seeing this huge adjustment for everyone in the company.
For sure.
Yeah.
Again, from the scenes from next week, last night, there was the scene of Harry saying, I'm not going to let you ruin this moment, my moment, to Roger.
Yes, right. Good old...
So he's going to get some big promotion over at McCann.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And of course, you know how Harry is. It's all about him. Good old
hold it
Harry.
Against the rest of the Cranes.
Yes. Well, I think you would probably agree with me. I thought it was brilliant, though, that Don did come up with this last-minute idea. Even though it didn't work for him, I really thought it was pretty smart. Didn't you?
Absolutely. It was total Hail Mary. It would have been great. And I think all of them would just not we're definitely
Sorry about that. Yeah, I did kind of lose you a little bit, but yeah, it certainly was a very good plan. I really liked it. And one of the things too that I looked at through some of the numbers, because I think it's going to baffle a lot of people about why maybe McCann Erickson didn't at least maybe consider the fact, because they talked about 18 million in billings. That today rounds up to over 109,000 or 109 million dollars in billings, and the profit of 275,000 today would be a little over 1.6 million. So the company is obviously would be having huge casualty there by doing this, but obviously it was more important for them to make this move and to close down Sterling Cooper and Partners and move forward with their plan, which apparently obviously was their plan probably the entire time when they agreed to the to doing the whole buyout thing. So, do we still have you, Elise?
Can you not hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you now. We lost you for a second, but you're back. You are back now.
I'm back. Yeah. No, definitely. I think they have plans so that they can what they will. They don't want the mountain, whoever else, and they have it. So
yeah.
It is what it is, kids.
Yeah. Did you, after hearing Don, of course, fail with his pitch there? He was trying so hard there, but they weren't buying it, of course, because they already had their own agenda. And then Jim Hulbert's pitch back to them about why it's so wonderful and how they're going to advertising heaven. He did his homework. He knew everybody, what would make them excited. He knew what to say to Ted and Pete and Don and everybody. But of course, he did not know he didn't have anything to say for poor Joan. How did you feel about that?
Well, I mean, Joan knows that it's going to be miserable, the kind of behavior she's going to have to put up with if she is in that office. Maybe they'll wear themselves out after a while, but her. So I mean, to convince, so, he doesn't have to convince her, care about her. I don't think he wastes on her.
Yeah. Well, I have the same feelings you were. I mean, she definitely knows what to expect going over there. And I think that there's going to be those problems she's going to run into that we had seen earlier in the season, like I said, with the McCann people. It's people don't take her seriously, like she said. And I of course, love the part where Pete and then we're talking in the cab, and he reassured her that hey, they don't realize who they're dealing with. And I thought that was really sweet for him to say that. Pete had lots of great moments, and I definitely going to be talking about those. But yeah, so it was understandable. He didn't know what else he doesn't really have anything necessarily to say to her, but he certainly had everybody else pegged. That's for sure. Especially I like when he got to Don, where he just kind of whispered, "Coca-Cola." He's like, he knew that was something that Don in the past has talked about, trying to get a big soda like Coca-Cola. So he had the right things to say. And it was...
until he sits through one of his Hershey's, he'll be wishing he hadn't sucked on in.
Yeah. Well, the only one that seems to be okay with everything is, of course, Ted Chaw, which... we've kind of learned through this episode, a lot of things have changed in his life. And for him, he's at a point where he just wants somebody else to drive the ship. His life is changed a lot, and he likes being in advertising, but he doesn't want to deal with all the headaches that you have to go through and running an advertising business and being a partner and all that stuff. So he seems to be obviously very okay with it, but everybody else, of course, is not, for obvious all different reasons, but mostly the same reason, that is that they have worked so hard to build up this company, and it means so much to them for all the hard work they've done, and now it's all gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone, but it's also, it's not like this terrible thing really that's happening to them, except for Joan.
Yeah,
they'll all continue working and have available to them to do their work. So Jim Hobart wasn't lying. I mean, it's going to be great for them there. It's not going to be their own, place. They're not going to have their own shingle out. Maybe for Roger, that's sad to no longer have his family name on a business. But, for the most part, it's not a terrible thing that's happening to the men anyway.
Yeah, that's true. No, it's not. But I totally understood where everybody was coming from and their reasonings on why it was so devastating, heartbreaking for them. So let's continue, though. Let's finish up with Ted for a second, because I have to give you some major creds again this season. You nailed it. You said, I believe after that first episode with a small little conversation between him and Don, you picked up on the fact that Ted had left his wife. And this, of course, episode, we confirmed it.
Yeah.
So pat yourself on the back, Elise.
No. And she stayed in California, which kind of surprised me with her boys. I guess she decided she didn't want to move around again. So they're still out in California.
Yeah, they're still in California. He's there in New York. Apparently, he had run into an old girlfriend he knew from college or something that the two of them couldn't remember why they weren't together, but now they're making a run at it. So he's at, like I said, he's at a point in his life. I think he is hopefully eventually getting to a point where he's happy. He obviously wasn't happy in his previous marriage, and not just because of the Peggy thing. I think the Peggy thing was a reminder of him that he is not happy in his marriage, that he was able to, fall in love with someone else. That's obvious. If you're married and you fall in love with someone else, that's
there might
a sign
be something bad.
There might be a problem, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. But as we've had so many great scenes to talk about in this episode, but I really did enjoy this scene, though, with Don and Ted when they had their little heart-to-heart there as they were working out this plan. And, Ted told him, he said, I made a mistake there. You should have been the one to go to California, not me. And I thought it was great that he admit that.
Yeah. Well, he just said he felt bad when he saw how Don just completely unraveled during that time period, which is true. Yeah. I mean, maybe things wouldn't have come exactly that way if he had gone out to California. But I think he got fired before any of that actually went into motion anyway. So, or not fired, but put on probation, whatever that was. But that was nice of him to say, that he felt bad about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was great that he mentioned that. This episode, obviously, it's centric to a lot around Pete. So we finally got an episode where we got to see a lot of Pete. And this is what I call this side of Pete, because we had just about every scene that we had was the Pete that everybody would kind of prefers, right? The nice Pete, the Pete that is saying a lot of great things, being overly nice to a lot of people, And I, of course, thought that there was multiple wonderful moments for him in this episode. I certainly want to talk about all of them. Let's first talk about the fact that we did get to see Trudy. Were you surprised about that?
I mean, at this point, no, not really. I would not have thought that we would have seen so many of the old cast members, but now I'm kind of, I've kind of got hope for Sal even at this point that I feel like we've seen everybody but. So it was good to see Trudy. It was interesting to see the two of them allied together again.
Yeah. It was. I was glad, we kind of got a good feeling of where they're at necessarily in their relationship, which I think that the way the things played out, of course, with the Tammy and the school, I wonder how this could maybe change their relationship, because we learn about the fact that Tammy was not accepted into the Greenwich County Day School, and Pete and Trudy decide to go to meet with this person, that's in charge or whatever, makes the decisions. And so we had this scene, which of course we definitely need to talk about. But I am kind of wondering what's going to come out of this. So let's talk about the scene first, though, because wow, what a scene! Was that not? I don't think I would have ever seen that coming.
The thing with the principal or whoever that Mr. McDonald was.
Yes.
That was bizarre. We launched back into Outlander on Showtime for a minute there with his reference to the 300-year-old vendetta between the two families.
So, okay, yeah. So first, he gives the excuse about the draw a man test, which apparently, from the little research I've heard, is that was a real test that they ran. And the part I thought was very interesting is that some of the experts say that the reason why they used to run this test is that it would be able to determine whether or not you had if you possibly could become schizophrenic. So, like, depending on how you drew the man could determine whether or not you could be a schizo, I guess, which is just, obviously our methods of testing people for certain things have changed over the years. And I think we've moved past whether or not someone draws eyes and noses on a person is definitely changed. So we get this excuse from him about this. Then we hear that, then he starts talking about how Trudy neglected to apply for other schools. And so he kind of throws blame on her. And then as they're getting ready to leave, then we hear this whole story about this 300-year-old story about how his family apparently murdered it's so crazy, Elise. I can't even hardly. So this Mr. McDonald claims that this 300-year-old story that the Campbells murdered his family while they were sleeping.
And this is a true story. The Campbells really did murder the McDonalds in Scotland 350 years ago.
Right. So I don't think anybody, and even if you knew history well, I don't know if anybody would ever thought to include this storyline, but kudos to Matthew and the writers to come up with this. But how crazy was that? And then Pete's like, he said the king ordered it. And then we get the big scene where he punches the guy in the mouth for continuing to insult his wife. I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say after that scene. Me and my wife looked at each other and go, what the heck just happened there?
But I think it was a good way to bring Pete and Trudy back together, and I think maybe they'll be the ones that end up getting remarried at this point now.
Yeah, I like that because you had said that this gentleman, this Mr. McDonald, obviously did help bring a common enemy between the two of them, and I think you're right about that. That was great. So when they go back to the house, and then we had this moment where Trudy kind of opened up to him because, the first thing you want to know is what happened with the applying for other schools. She thought she had a backup, but apparently, because she is the only divorced, woman in the neighborhood, that she's having a lot of issues with the other husbands in the neighborhood where they're, causing issues, with probably approaching her or who knows what else, is going on. And so it's caused a lot of problems for her. And she seems obviously very down. And then Pete had, I love the line where he basically tells her that she's ageless because, she immediately said, well, in 10 years, everybody's going to forget about me anyway. And I think you're right. When you look at the way that this whole scene take place, it makes me wonder if maybe she, I don't know, I don't think we're going to see them getting remarried, but maybe she at least takes them back in and gives them a chance.
I think it's a possibility. I think it's a definite possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if their marriage can be salvaged or not, but it would be very interesting. And if at least maybe this will help their relationship as friends, of two people who are obviously, they're raising a child. So hopefully maybe it can at least bridge something there because, I'm sure she was very touched that he came to her aid and defended her honor and to this guy who apparently really needs to learn to let things go. I've never heard anybody bring up 300-year-old battles, but man, talk about letting it go, right?
It's true. And Pete, 2 episodes ago where he was saying about being afraid never to be able to get past the beginning again. So I think they're both maybe open to it and maybe hoping that they've learned their lessons. They can make a new go of it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, that has happened. That can happen in relationships. Sometimes, somebody gets separated, and as time goes on, you get older. You learn a lot of things. Hey, I know a lot more than I did. When I first got married, I've learned a lot over the years, and so as time goes on, you learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about your partner, and maybe this time away from each other will be good, and they can bring it back and maybe somehow salvage it. It'd be great. It'd be great for Tammy, of course, to have their parents back together. So I'm going to hold out hope that maybe something
Yeah,
can come of their relationship again. That would be great. And it would be a nice ending story for Pete.
absolutely. I would love to see them get back together on the right foot this time.
Yeah, because I think everybody loves Trudy. She was definitely the better half between the two of them, that's for sure.
For sure. For sure. No argument from me on that one.
Yeah. Well, the other great scene that we had, I just absolutely loved, was the scene together where Pete, wants to inform Peggy about what's going on, about the absorption of the company. What a fantastic scene this was. How did you feel about that scene?
I thought that was very sweet. I wasn't sure if he just was reminded of his protective nature of Peggy or their child together when he sees her being embraced by the child who's there for the audition, and then he kind of looks at her and he's like, oh, I should tell her, and then calls her into the office. I mean, he's loyal to her still. He wants to make sure she's okay.
Yeah. He has feelings. Yeah, he has feelings for her, maybe not necessarily, in the kind of feelings of love and romance or anything like that, but he does care a lot about her, and he wants, as much as they bicker and argue and fight about certain things, in the office, he still does have a special place in his heart for Peggy, and he just wanted to make sure she knew, hey, this is going on. I think it's only fair, as much as you've been through for this company, that what's about ready to happen. So I thought that was really sweet. And it just reminded me of their conversations they've had over the years. It reminded me of all the many other scenes nice scenes we've seen the two of them have. And it was great. I don't know if this will be the last, scene that we get of the two of them together in this particular, format like this, but it certainly was really nice to see. I thought it was kind of great where he had that line. He said that having a leg up on the rats who fly off the ship is only going to help you. So he's even giving her advice and stuff. So, but great scene. I'm sure everybody probably really enjoyed the interaction between the two of them here.
Definitely, that was very.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, the other great scene was that scene in the cab with Joan after they had their little happy hour session. It was great because he reminded Joan to say, hey, you're a special person and you do offer a lot. They don't realize, what they're going to have until they get to see you firsthand. And I love that scene. I got a little bit emotional watching all of these scenes with Pete because we're so used to seeing Pete be a jerk. And when we get to see Pete being nice, it's great. So
yeah, it was interesting because he does. He kind of still like, and you should be the cheerleader here, and she just doesn't have it in her to do that. And that, like, of all people, Pete is come around to the fact that she is actually a really good businesswoman, and I think that felt good to her. But I think Joan knows what's going to happen. It's not going to be pretty for her, McCann. It's going to be 4 years of hey baby.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, we all know that I think for most people, when you think about season 5 and you think about how he kind of really pushed her into the whole thing with the Jaguar, and I think that put a real damper on things, because, that he really put her in that position. And because Pete is, he's a slime ball, when it comes to business, he's willing to do a lot of things that maybe a lot of us would not be willing to do to try to get what he wants. And he kind of used Joan there, and granted, yes, things worked out for Joan as far as financially, even though she had to make that tough choice and did what she did, it did put her in an extremely good spot for her career. And she was able to get to that place that she really wanted to be. So, but it was great to see that they're at a good spot now, for the two of them. And I really enjoyed seeing that.
Yeah.
Obviously, lots of great scenes with Peggy in this episode, getting to see, especially the aftermath of what happens with the mother and her interaction with the children and getting to really dive into this question about, about that choice that she made of giving up her little boy. And it really came
I
all
thought that was
together.
really beautifully put.
It was
I thought like
really
the way
well
she
done.
phrased that,
Uh-huh.
it was just that one sentence about like, it's not that I don't care, it's that I know where he is, or I won't be
Yes.
able to go on with my life the way any man would be able to go on with his life. And I was like, you know what, that's so concise and well put. I think anybody can say it better.
Well, you mentioned at the top of the top of this podcast is that lots of people on the internet, everyone was talking about Stan and Peggy, and the scenes we've seen together. And I think so many people are like yourself, Elise, and even me, that thinks that these two could make a great pairing together. But this scene, though, going back to what you said, was so amazing. I absolutely love this scene, and you're right. What she said was so profound and so perfect about not knowing, I don't know, not knowing it because it's not because she doesn't care, but that it's that because you're supposed to know, but you can't go on with your life. And she's right. If she knew for sure what was going on in her little boy's life, she would have a hard time moving forward, and she would be questioning those things. I know it sounds terrible to say, but it's so true. And the way she said it was really, really beautiful.
Of course. I mean, it was a very profound moment. And the connection between her and Stan, and when she was, don't know a lot of things about a lot of people, that's the point. And he was like, no, that's not the point. The point is what we just share. He doesn't say that part, but he's like, that's not the point. And like, they just kind of look at each other for a second. Like, he is like, finally understands her as a person, some things that maybe he was like, that were holding back, that, the way she is around children, some of the things she's done that he's kind of looked at and been like, what is your problem? And that, in his mind, she was not middle, she was probably like 30 or something at this point, but that, she had missed her chance to have children and she was angry about it, is what he said. And it's like, she's not angry, she's sad because the choice she made.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you're right. That's why it's so tied up so beautifully, like you said, because we have all these scenes with the kids, and of course that's what Stan would be thinking, right? I think I probably would be thinking the same thing, not to be mean, that's what was going on there. But then when the truth gets to him and he realizes what really had happened and what's really going on, you could just tell the expression in his face had changed so much to where he's like, oh, he goes, he understood. He got it. He understood it, and it was beautiful. I just loved it, and I do really think this. We look at the catapult here to maybe put us into who could Peggy wind up with, as far as if there's a chance for her to have love. I do think this scene in this episode, I really think they may be setting us up for this, and I know that's what the fans want. Time Magazine talked about it today. They were all over it about how everybody on Twitter was talking about Stan and Peggy getting together. And I was thinking, oh, come on. My girl Elise has been talking about that for a long time. Going all the way back. Going all the way back to season 4 with the two of them in that hotel room, and she takes off her clothes. They've had a bond. They've had a slow burning friendship that's continued to get on to the point to where now they're really starting to understand each other. He's starting to understand her, and he's starting to understand him, and they're at that just great moment where
when they're can't hear you.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I lost you there for a second. But what I was going to say is that, even up to the point to like we had seen that very last scene with them together where, again, she just wants to leave him on the phone so she can be able to hear him and know that he's there. And it's so beautiful. I mean, we've seen this before, how they would have their long conversation on the phone. And it's just a beautiful relationship. And whether or not it turns into anything more than friendship, but it certainly is a powerful one, that's for sure.
No, definitely that part on the phone where she was like, "Can you just stay on the phone?" Like, I mean, that's the sweetest thing. It's like, let's just sit in our offices with the line open between us, so breathe. They just make each other feel better. I mean, what else do you want in a partner? So
Yeah, exactly. I know there was more than one person that said that was one of their favorite lines from the episode was, "Could you just stay on the phone?" It was beautiful because the two of them knew it was coming. They didn't want to be out there in the offices and dealing with all that. They just wanted to be in their office working and get out of the mess of what was going on. The two of them just sitting there talking about what their plans are going to be and their future, and it was just beautiful. I loved it. And while we're on that conversation, let's talk about Peggy's decision. You know, we see earlier on in the episode she's meeting up with this, which I believe I guess would be a headhunter, and he basically tells her, "Say, listen, your best move is to stay with McCann Erickson, and within 4 years you will have 4 times your salary and be in an amazing position." And I think this is a good move for her. What do you think?
I do too. I mean, she doesn't want to be there and creative control. I was doing some reading, and I guess it was about this time in the early 70s when the creatives in advertising a lot of their control over campaigns. So that's definitely going to be the beginning of the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
When they go to a human, they're not going to be able to. It's hard for her, but it's also super prestigious, and everyone's going to know her name, and she'll probably finally get to go to the Clios and actually even win one. So she's got to do it. And even if it's miserable for the 4 years, when she's done, she can start her own agency or go to another small shop or something.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. And I think that he made a lot of good sound advice there. So I think it'd probably be best for both of them to just stick it out and see what happens for them. And if they can hang on long enough, they'll be able to, like you said, they'll have enough cred they can to move on to a different company and maybe get in a spot that they, like you said, would be, in a better spot for them, for their future. So. Okay, so we have a lot of other things to really cover. Let's talk about, now you wanted to mention the Jim Cutler thing.
Yeah, just because
we've been wondering about it.
All been to Jim Cutler. Jim Cutler won. He gets all the money and doesn't have to deal with McCann. So I'm guessing he took some kind of buyout, the contract or something. I don't know if he got more or less or how that worked, but I guess we won't get to see any Harry Hamlin.
Right. Yeah, for those of you who missed it, it was a very brief, offhanded comment that Roger makes during all of this, and he said something about, he was kind of venting, and he says, "Man, Cutler lucked out by just taking the money," or something like that. I don't remember I didn't write down the exact line, but he did make a comment there. And so to me, that's clarification that, yeah, he did some kind of buyout, some kind of he cashed out somehow and left. So yeah, no Harry Hamlin, no Jim Cutler. So that's a little disappointing.
It is, because I really liked Harry Hamlin in that part. It was really kind of funny. And
yeah, it was one of those things, like, I loved Harry Hamlin in the part. I don't know how much I care necessarily about Jim Cutler, but I loved him in the part. So, not having him is the sad part, really, more than anything, about not having Jim Cutler, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, I know I know
Hamlin in something interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
We want him.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is how this whole news really affected Roger, and I thought, to me, one of the saddest parts was the conversation when he's having with Don, which another great scene. But when he's having with them, and he's talking about his name, how we know he's got Kevin, but that's not his legitimate son, as far as, he's not going to be known as Sterling, that he doesn't have anybody to take on his name, that the company meant his name living on. And I thought, man, gosh, that was kind of heartbreaking to hear that. I never really thought it necessarily in that way for Roger, but yeah, he was kind of hoping that he could hold on to Sterling Cooper's name for as long as possible, so that way it would live on.
Yeah.
Like the way McCann Erickson still is today. I mean, it's still going on. I guess he was hoping he could do that with Sterling Cooper.
Yeah.
Well,
It's sad.
yeah, it was.
I mean,
Did I lose you, Elise?
sorry. Oh, no, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, for those of you who are watching us live, we're really sorry. We're having a terrible connection tonight, so hopefully it will clear up a little bit more here before we close out. But that's how the internet is, Elise. We have no control over these
No.
things, you know.
It's been
Well,
really here too, so I think it's messing up the Wi-Fi or
oh,
the internet.
those.
Oh yes.
What do
Well,
we do about it?
the part I really liked about the scene with Roger and Don was when Roger grabbed Don's face and kissed him and said, "You're okay," which I think was like the most, outside of his marriages and myriad women, Don has ever received from another human being. I don't know if anyone's ever been that sweet to him who he wasn't having sex with or wanting to, or they were wanting to. This was just like a genuine, I was like, wow, that was huge for him.
I am so glad you mentioned that because it's true. It was such a sweet moment, but it was kind of took you off guard. But looking at it that way, you're right. I don't think any other human being has ever done that to Don Draper, ever.
I know. I mean, it was this close to saying "I love you." It was this.
Yeah, it was. Well, they've all, of course, always have had such a special, friendship and bond together. It was just great that the way he said it like that, So I did really enjoy that.
I love that, and the whole thing about Roger and Marie getting together, and that was all done. And it sounds like they are staying together. He said he wanted to make sure it was real or something, and so he must think it's real, at least at this point.
Yes, that was another big thing that we got to hear was the confirming that yes, Roger and Marie are together, and I did love Don's reaction to it. He's like, she's crazy.
Good old supportive Don.
Yeah. Well, and Roger said, "Hey, listen, man, you made fun of me. You gave me a hard time for going off and marrying my secretary, and then you turn around and did the same thing, right?" And he reminds him of that. And of course, hey, there was nothing Don could argue. He was like, "Yep, you got me. You're right." And then what I thought was very interesting as he leaves to go see Marie. Funny enough, who does Don run to try to find? Tries to go find Diana, which we all know is also a mistake, And I'm not saying that the Marie and Roger thing is necessarily a complete mistake. Who knows? Maybe the two of them will live happily ever after. I don't know. The poor guy has made so many poor decisions when it comes to love. It's really hard to say. I personally I don't think he should be with Marie because I think she's dangerous there, but hey, who knows? But then, anyway, what did you think about that? How the first thing Don wanted to do is to run to this to try to see if he could find Diana, the waitress.
For the night, and he was feeling, so he went to look for her. She had called. They showed that earlier in the episode where she had called twice and not left any messages, but she might have just been calling to say I'm leaving, so or if he will.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we saw early in the episode, she was trying to contact him and not really trying to contact him. It was really weird. You could tell she's probably been struggling whether or not she really did want to continue with this relationship. And then, of course, Don is willing to keep it going because that's what he wanted to do. But we all know this is obviously not right for him. So, but I did think it was very ironic that was the first thing that the writers showed us is that he was running to try to see if he can get a hold of Diana, because of course apparently is not living in that apartment. So I don't know where she's at. I guess she's gone missing. So I don't know if Don ever will see her again unless she tries to contact him.
Yeah. Phone number since he's moving.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's not like the days of today where, cell phone, I give you my cell phone number and you can get a hold of me anytime you want. But those days hadn't come yet. So yeah, he'll probably move and get a new number
No.
and she won't know how to get a
And
hold of him.
the office number will change when they move to McCann Erickson.
Right. Good point.
And he will, unless they connect very, very soon.
Right. Well, we'll see what develops with that. Ken gets his revenge, I guess. Shall we say? Can we call it revenge? I don't know how Ken looks at this, but he's able to finally have the moment he said he's been dreaming about, Elise. That having Roger and Pete there, and then basically begging for his business, and then he turns them down. So apparently, what do you think? This is what he kind of really wanted. This is the reason why he took the job with Dow, right? Is so he could have this moment to tell them no, right?
Pretty much. I mean, he said he'd messed with them for too long or whatever. He's been enjoying it right along, yanking their chain. So he's finally letting them free with the final, I'm not going to help you reincarnate yourself once again.
Yep. It was a great moment. And for Ken, I totally get it. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve that kind of moment for him. I'm not trying to take that moment away from him. It's just for Ken, he's a character that I just thought he was always above that kind of stuff. And going all the way back now, of course, again, to the same conversations we had when we found out that Ken was taking the Dallas job and to basically kind of stick it to Sterling Cooper and Partners. I don't know. It just now it's leaving kind of a sour taste in my mouth for Ken Cosgrove, who I thought was this really sweet, decent guy who's not about getting revenges and getting up on somebody. But I think, like we had said during that episode review, was that, the business has really hardened poor Ken's heart a lot. And so he's kind of changed a lot because of it. So hopefully maybe now that there's maybe going to be no more relationship with them, that he can change things. Maybe things could change in his life.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Hopefully that will happen for Ken.
And I did think it was funny how he was just totally loves apparently to mess with Pete, where, he's arguing about the strategy they were going with. The whole germ killer makes people think of poop. By the way, Elise, does germ killer make you think of poop? No? Okay. No? Okay. Well, I will admit it. I don't think of poop when I think of germ killer, so. But I guess I could. I don't know why I never thought of it before. But yeah, I loved how Ken, of course, was totally messing with Pete. It was fantastic. And as soon as Don sits down, he's like, Pete or Ken, don't question the strategy. It's the right one. Oh, okay.
Yes, Don.
Pete really wanted to say something to him right there, but he knew he couldn't, and that's what was killing him, right?
Yeah. But Pete.
Yeah. Do I still have you, Elise?
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's talk about, though, the fact that it does seem like that Richard and Joan are still together. Things are working out with the two of them. He was being the good boyfriend, and immediately as soon as he found out she was upset, he's willing to fly out to go see her. I thought that was really sweet.
That was really sweet.
Yeah, so I'm glad. I'm very hopeful for this, Elise. Now we do have a question from one of our listeners on Facebook that there's a little more concern that's taking a direction. This person's afraid that maybe things aren't going well, which we'll talk about that in a second when we get to the question section. But right now, I'm feeling like this could be for real, and that this is a really awesome person for her. And I think that they're going to be an item here. This is great. Great news for Joan on that front.
I agree. I hope so too.
Yeah, and she needs good news, with everything happening here with McCann thing and knowing that things could be rough for her again, and she's going to have to go through all this crap that she had to go through with Sterling Cooper, and now she's going to have to go through this stuff with a whole new company. I feel for her, so at least she knows she's going to have someone that's going to be there to help support her and get her through this, and I think that's going to be so beneficial for her.
For sure.
Absolutely.
She's going to need a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah. Well, someone is moving on, and it will not be going to McCann Erickson, and that would be Lou Avery.
Goodbye, Lou.
Well,
Sayonara.
Sayonara. So he finally found someone to buy the whole Scout Honor cartoon strip. How about that? He's going to live his dream. Yeah, he's going to live his dream in Japan. How about that?
I know. They're going to eat him alive, Roger says.
Yeah, the Japanese are going to eat him alive. That Tascanuco Productions, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right, that really did produce a Speed Racer in 1967. Another thing, too, by the way, he mentioned that he got fronted $15,000. Is that correct? Did I hear that properly? I think that's what he said.
I think so.
Fronted $15,000. So I looked that up in today's money. That's $91,238. That's a nice upfront money, you know?
Absolutely.
That's a nice advance. So Lou's gone. I don't think anybody is going to be sad about missing Lou. Oh, yeah, I would take that kind of money, yes. Are you going to miss Lou?
I don't think so. I think I'll be good.
You'll be good without his snarky comments and his just, oh, there's nothing I liked about this guy. But that's okay. We weren't supposed to. Yeah, good riddance, Lou. Yeah, I don't think anybody's...
quality of...
Yeah, he had no good qualities that I could think of.
You didn't like the tiki bar?
I did. No, you're right. I forgot. Yes, the tiki bar. The tiki bar was nice. And apparently he was able to introduce some people to rum. So that's good. I'm a rum guy. I'm cool with that. All right, so let's talk about Meredith. She stands up for herself. This was a great moment for Meredith. Right?
Meredith's good about that. When push comes to...
Yeah. She's able to stick up for herself. Yeah, I'm sure everybody loved it. I know that I followed Stephanie Drake on Twitter, and I know she was getting a lot of love last night, and rightfully so. Her character had some great moments, and I just loved the fact that, like I said, she was able to push come to shove. She's going to make sure, hey, Don, are you taking me or what? What's going on here? And I thought that was just fantastic.
It was good.
So I guess the last thing you mentioned is that, we had this fantastic closing scene where Rogers, of course, is explaining what's happening and, what's going to take place. And, of course, immediately the office just erupts so loudly that no matter what him or Don could say, nobody was listening to anything at that point. The rumor had finally come through. Everybody knows it's true. And no surprise. I mean, listen, if you've ever been involved in a company that gets bought out, immediately everybody's churning to the worst. I mean, you can't help but think about it because it's human nature, to think that things are going to be bad,
Yeah, well, they're all worried about their jobs, so...
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that they're all going to be worried that they're going to be out on the street and not have a job. So it was very understanding, but it was a great way to close out the episode because you knew that had to be the reaction that everybody was going to have, and it sets us up perfectly for what the direction they're going to go. Like I said, for these last few episodes and how the feelings are going to be going into this thing, because I'm sure it's going to be really devastating for some people, and so we'll be very interested to see how this plays off. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, like I said earlier, for some of those other side characters that I really do care about.
Yeah.
Well, as we close out, I do want to mention a couple of things, historical stuff that I thought we could run through. The closing song, we got to hear the King of Cool, Dean Martin. I love Dean Martin. For anybody who doesn't know me very well, I love Dean. I love everybody from the Rat Pack. This particular song, Money Burns a Hole in My Pocket, You could actually have seen this in the 1954 film Living It Up. I'd say I don't know if I've seen Living It Up. Now, of course, you, Elise, being a classic film expert, I'm assuming you probably have seen this, right?
I think I had. I didn't look it up, so I'm not sure which one it is. It might be one of the ones where he plays a detective, and it's escaping me now.
Okay.
But it's where he has the big round bed and he's spinning around in it.
Okay. All right. That does sound kind of a little familiar. I'll be the first to admit, I've only seen a few of the movies that he did that was not co-starring Jerry Lewis. I'll be honest. I did see all of those, of course, but I have seen a few of the movies that Jerry was not in. And that plot does sound a little familiar. So maybe one of these days I'll catch it again and be able to hear that song. But anyway, that was the closing song. Perfect for the moment. Again, as always, they do a great job picking the songs. That bottle
sorry, I
of
just
wine,
looked it up, and it is a Jerry Lewis one.
Oh, it does have Jerry Lewis. Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
An unsophisticated Mexico fraudulently claims that he is dying in order to get an expense-paid dream tour of New York, which sounds like a remake of another film. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Well, then that's probably yeah, that's probably why I recognized it then.
Yes.
This Ken's bottle of wine that he loves so much, which I'm sure I'm not going to be able to pronounce it. I know Chateau Margaux. How do you pronounce the last part?
Chateau Margaux.
Oh, it is Margaux. Okay.
Margaux.
Very good. That 1953 bottle, $39, I think he said that the bottle cost. Of course, that would be $300 or $237 today. I saw some other people talking about it. So you could get 6 bottles of that wine today, Elise, for only $5,000. Or was it 6,000? Something like that. Pocket change for you, right?
It's good stuff. It's good stuff, man. You got to pick what you want.
Apparently, it's very good wine. If any of our listeners would like to send me a bottle, I'm not against that. Just hit me up, email me, and I'll give you my home address.
I'm guessing today it goes for a lot more.
Yes, it goes for a lot. So basically, you're probably going to spend $1,000 or more maybe for a bottle. I don't, again, I'm not necessarily an expert here. But if you'd like to send me a bottle, by all means, I would be perfectly okay with that. What about you, Elise? Would you be okay if somebody wants to send you a bottle?
That's all right. Send me some rum.
You would rather have the rum. Oh, okay. Well, I'll be honest. I am a wine guy, so
there we go.
As our old co-host here, Jason Peasel, likes to tell me, you're a wino. And I said, I know. Hey, at least I'm able to admit it. Admitting is always the first step, right?
Absolutely.
But I do like rum.
Just ask Don Draper.
Yeah. Very good. McCann Erickson actually really did absorb one of their brother companies in October of 1970. Irwin Wasley Incorporated, they actually absorbed them in 1970. How about that? So I'm sure that Matt knew this, and so it kind of worked out great for the storyline that the McCann Erickson actually did absorb a company around the same time. How about that, huh?
Interesting. It's all based on fact.
Exactly, yes. Now, I know you mentioned something about seeing Trudy's calendar, making you kind of question what date it was. I had read that a lot of people think it's June because there was a Time magazine that was on Peggy's coffee table, and that particular Time magazine was dated for June 29th, 1970. So that makes more sense, though, right, that it would be June, because then that means, again, we've only jumped around a month.
Right? It could be, although the calendar you see in the background that's on the wall, it's sort of like a wall-hanging one where you move circles around on the dates. Had August circled and Tuesday, and you couldn't see what the date was. It was definitely, may not have changed it for a year, or it might have just been a snafu. But that was the date marked in Trudy's kitchen on the day she called about the.
Okay. See, I have to admit I missed the calendar, so it was a good pickup on you, but I missed the whole thing. So that's what I mentioned it because I knew you had mentioned in our notes. So. Very good. Well, I think we're definitely could settle on the fact this probably is sometime either in the end of June, maybe the middle of July. No,
or August.
Or August. Okay, yes. Yeah, okay, I got you. Yes. Sorry, with since our silly connection, breaking it out, I'm sometimes I'm trying to guess what you're saying. All right, so since we're let's try to close things up. Oh, the last thing was apparently George Bush Sr. did go to Greenwich Country Day School. So if you're interested, Mr. One of the Bushes went there. And if anyone is interested, you want some more of this great stuff that I'm referring to, I'm going to have a link for the GotTheMist.com's post that they had where they've got all the stuff with the pictures and everything. And it's really great for all those of you out there who do really cherish and love to talk about some of the historical things and how it fits with the show. So there you go. So let's get to this question, Elise. Jeannie on Facebook. Jeannie has, and I'm kind of shorting this a little bit, but she is concerned about this Richard fella, okay? Because she apparently kind of thought that Richard was, when he said he was going to take a red eye to the flight, that he was yelling into a blank office. She's afraid that maybe this Richard guy is a little shady and may not be who he says he is, and maybe after Joan's money. Now, you pointed out the fact that it looked like he was yelling to the dark room, but the door was colored black, right? Is that what you said?
It's a shiny black door. If you freeze the frame, you can see the doorknob and you can see the reflection of the lamp in it. He's just yelling at a closed door to his secretary, who may or may not be there. I don't know. Jeannie.
Yeah.
He could still be right. It's just a dark room.
Well, there's no doubt, Jeannie, you could be correct about this, but I am going to I'm going to go on the side that I think that he is a good, decent person, and that he truly cares about Joan, and that this is going to be a great ending for her. Because I don't want to see her find another terrible person. She's already had too much of that, right?
No. Yeah, he looks legitimate. He's got plaques on his wall there, and he's got stuff.
Come on, Jeannie, come on now. He's legit. But I understand what you're saying. He's a smooth talker, and I get it. I could understand how someone could be watching this guy and thinking, maybe there's something there. But I'm holding out hope. Elise, so where are you on the record for this? Are you holding out hope this guy's legit and he's okay?
I think he's legit.
Okay, good. Now, our intern, Greg, which I mentioned earlier, he had got the reports for us, and he's even recruited his aunt to help out. So hello, Greg's aunt. Thank you for helping us out. He was able to look up a lot of the stories to see how everybody fared with the episode. And, of course, like I said, most of them, or pretty much everything he saw was all positive. Everybody loved this episode. So thank you, Greg, again, for your reports. Sometimes I forget to mention all of them, but thank you so much. But he wanted to know about the finale. He wants to know, is it going to be longer than an hour? I have not heard anything about it being longer than an hour. Have you heard the finale is going to be longer than an hour?
I haven't, but I haven't really checked either. So really no, I'd be happy if it were a 7-hour finale.
Right. I was under if we remember the part of our conversation about the splitting of the season into 2, and then we would get 14. And one of the reasons why they were doing it, we get 14 because we get that extra hour, and that was one of the things they worked in about the split deal well, can I have another hour? And so Matt got his extra hour. So I'm on the impression right now, Greg, that that final episode will only be an hour-long episode, but whether it's going to be extended hour of some kind, I'm not sure. And if I find out, by all means, I will definitely share that, because I don't spend I'm not spending a lot of time here for season B discussing all the news stuff that's going on. Which if you really are into that, by all means, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, because I do share all that stuff on there. But as far as this particular news is concerned, I will definitely share it if I find out if the episode will be longer, because that will be interesting to find out. Okay, and so our last question came from an email, and this is also from Chris Toms, who I mentioned earlier, had the amazing prediction about the company being absorbed by McCann. Chris wanted to know about if you remember, Joan had mentioned a contract, or mentioned about how we have a 4-year contract with McCann, but then he was going back thinking, Chris was mentioning that and I keep saying Chris. I keep forgetting Chris could go either way. I'm just assuming Chris is a man, but Chris is wanting to know about that conversation that Joan had when she mentioned 4 years, because we'd heard last season that they had to sign a 5-year contract, and Chris wants to know, is Joan just referring to the fact that we're 1 year now from that signing, and that she's basically saying that we have 4 more years left? Is
right.
that how you
I
read
think that's true. Yeah, and they signed that in July, so it's another note that we're probably farther in the summer.
Just past that. Okay, and Chris, that's how I read into it too. Is that this was basically just that a year has passed, and Joan was talking about what they had left on their contract, but it was a little bit iffy there, and how the way she said it, I think she did say something like, "Well, we signed a 4-year contract." But I think that's what they meant, because they did clearly say 5 years when we had the finale, the Waterloo episode. They did say 5 years. So there you go. That's what we're going to go on, Chris. Thank you, though, for the question. Thank you for everyone who sends in questions. I know that there was, make sure there was somebody who was thinking about sending this question on Twitter, and I'll have to look and see if we got something here. But Elise, closing thoughts. Anything that you want to add about this episode?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, I do. I think we covered it as well, and it looks like we did have some questions. I'll probably have to go through these later on. At least I'll answer these last minute questions on Twitter. I'll make sure I get back with everybody here. But yes, thank you so much for everyone who sends in questions, and we'll be obviously back here again next week around the same time. Hopefully, we will not have as many internet connections like we have in tonight. Obviously, we have had some issues, so hopefully things will run a little smoother for us as we close out the final 3 episodes. And I'm expecting some good. I think we're going to see, these final 3, Elise, I think you're going to build on this one, and I think we're just going to get better and better and better. What do you think about that?
I hope you're right. Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I hope the word spreads about how good this one is, and those people who are really upset about these first few that we've got to see will jump back in right away and get excited about this, because it's getting interesting, and we are coming to the end so quickly, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see how they close it out. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast. If you're not, make sure you do. You can, of course, subscribe to us on iTunes by going to madmanpodcast.com/iTunes. And if you're interested in the video, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is madmanpodcast.com/YouTube. So find that. That'd be great. Hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to work. I've got one little video project that I'm working on, Elise, and I'm hoping to get it finished here before the end of this season. I'll definitely put that on the YouTube channel as well, along with, of course, our reviews. So make sure you guys do that. By all means, anytime you want to send me some feedback like Chris did, you can email me at feedback@madmanpodcast.com. And hit us up on Twitter. Elise, how can people find you on Twitter? And of course, as soon as I ask you that, I don't get to hear you. Well, Elise is at Elise CD, so be sure you make sure you follow Elise. Oh, you're back now.
Here, it's right here. Elise.
There you are.
I'm gonna do it all in sign from now on.
You know what? Can you do that? Can you do the next episode in sign? Oh boy,
Maybe
that would be very interesting. It'd be very interesting for me to try to understand, since I do not read sign. But I could get a translator. Maybe I'll work on that. It's not a bad idea.
There you go.
So I believe I got it correct, right? At Elise CD is how you can follow Elise. Be sure to hit her up on Twitter, and by all means, make sure you read her blog at the larambler.com, right? Let's just say yes, it's right. All right, so yes, make sure that you definitely check out our blog. You can find all of our information at madmanpodcast.com. Elise, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the week, okay?
You too.
All right, everyone, make sure you take care and stay mad.